And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and vacuous forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly and permanently ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studios in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. And I have to tell you, I am absolutely happy to be back in the studio. It's not like I don't enjoy going to county commissioners' meetings and seeing how the level of disregard that they have for our Constitution, the Wyoming Constitution, the federal Constitution. You see, apparently, according to the Sheridan County Commissioners, private property rights don't exist anymore. Nope, you can't do whatever you want to do with your property in Sheridan County. You see, there's this development that's being planned or proposed east of town. And I mean, the guy owns, I don't know how many acres of it. I can't remember. But what he wants to do is create like a conservation easement. You see these across the state. And essentially, just the nuts and bolts of it, 70% of the property is going to be under this conservation easement. So no motorized travel, kind of like a wilderness area, except it's out on the plains. And then there's going to be 64 homes surrounding it. And there was a line of people saying, I don't want to look at somebody's barn out my picture window. You know, I bought this property because of the view, and I just don't want the increased traffic and all of this, on and on and on. Well, one of the people involved in the development got up and said, look, nobody is going to have to stare at anybody's barn. The way this is all planned is so that you can still retain your view. Not a single one of them infringes on your personal property rights. And he went through a long list of measures, precautions, I guess, if you will, that they've taken to make sure that none of those things are going to happen. He even went through a long list of people that they've met with, individual homeowners that surround the development, and addressed their concerns, or at least attempted to. Well, the Sheridan County Commissioners, and again, I have this all recorded so you can listen to it, County Commissioner Nick Siddle said, I'm a big private property guy. I love private property rights, and I understand when you buy a piece of property and you may not know who's going to live next to you, and there's nothing you can do about it, but I'm going to vote against this. Yeah, private property rights don't exist anymore in Sheridan County, at least with this set of county commissioners. They're a bunch of socialists, and they proved it yesterday by spending a whole bunch, not even spending, by giving away a whole bunch of taxpayer dollars to nonprofits and people that have no even rightful claim to our taxpayer money. In fact, there's a couple different passages in the Wyoming Constitution that absolutely prevent that. There's Article 16, Section 6, which says no town, subdivision, school district, state, whatever, can give any money to any private entity, corporation, or nonprofit, except for necessary support for the poor. This was brought up by somebody in the county commissioners meeting, a member of the public, and it was also brought up by Sheridan County Commissioner Holly Jennings. So she voted no on it, and the rest of them, yay, let's give away taxpayer money. So anyway, I think it was well worth my time away from the program, though I missed all of you as I do each and every time that I'm out of the studio. I have to tell you, like, there is nothing like having an audience that listens to you every day and just wants to hear what you have to say. It's amazing. And I say this a lot, but I can't tell you how big of a place in my heart you all have taken up. So I miss you every time I'm gone, but I'm happy to report what I found when I get back. A couple of program notes before we get going on the program. One of the reasons why I started live streaming from the studio to YouTube is so that I could kind of test out the waters and see if everything was going to work smoothly. And so far, it has. And so, kind of a quick announcement. Pretty soon, I'm going to try it tomorrow. We're going to also broadcast to Facebook Live also. So if you're on Facebook, you'll be able to watch what's happening in the Cowboy State Politics studio and watch it live. So that's pretty exciting. Also, a little announcement on the podcast this morning. I'm going to play the Kathy Russell interview. It is absolutely fascinating. That lady can trace her family lineage all the way back to the Salem witch trials. Holy cow, my friends. You'll hear me say it in the interview, but I want to sit down with Kathy Russell and just talk about that for a while. But I'm absolutely fascinating interview. You really get to get a good feel of who she is. And also during the episode, of course, I can't do anything with somebody running in House District 7, which is Bob Nicholas's district, without playing some of the classic Bob Nicholas sound bites. There's one from the special session, which he calls this, he says, we're in a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Yeah, he said that on the floor of the Wyoming House. And then there's another soundbite that's from this past session where he's trying to kill the ban on red flag gun seizures. That one's pretty interesting, too. So lots happening on the podcast, lots happening on the program today. Biden has apparently unveiled his new border security plan. Now, wait a minute. I thought that Congress had to act and that he didn't have any power to do any of this. Well, now the narrative is, well, Congress wouldn't act, so I'm going to go at this on my own. Well, the truth is, he's not doing anything on his own. He's the one that repealed 94 border security measures that Trump had put in place. 94. And now he's issued executive orders to try to fix all of the things that he screwed up. The only thing is, it's a big shell game. He's not fixing anything. In fact, he's codifying in his executive order. And I think I'll get to the article later on in the broadcast, but I think the number is 2,500. He's going to allow 2,500 illegal aliens to cross the border every single day. How is that increasing border security? Well, it's not. It's an election year ploy, and we're going to get into it later on in the program. Before we get going, kind of a note to some of the Cowboy State Politics sponsors. If you're looking for a pair of socks, you need high-quality socks for hiking in the mountains this summer. And the best pair of socks that I've ever tried is from the Buffalo Wool Company. They make the finest socks I've ever put on my feet. And, the truth is, wool is not only to be worn when it's cold. It'll keep you cool and dry in the summer. So if you want a good pair of socks for hunting, you're not going to be disappointed if you get a pair from the Buffalo Wool Company. Go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. But we begin this morning with a piece in the Cowboy State Daily, and I love this columnist. His name is Dave Simpson. He's got a really, matter-of-fact way of putting things, and I seem to sympathize with a lot of what he said. But the title of his most recent piece is Rare Democrats Spotted in Casper. Well, the truth is, Democrats are rare anywhere in the state, though there are more in Wyoming than any of us would care to admit. For example, in the last election, 943 people in Buffalo, Wyoming voted for Joe Biden. That's almost 25% of the population. If I had to guess, I would say the Republican versus Democrat number in Wyoming is probably something like 60-40, 55-45, something like that. I mean, Republicans still make up the vast majority of people in the state. But I think when it comes down to policy, you really have a much larger amount of Democrats in Wyoming. Just look at our bloated budget and look at the representation down in Cheyenne. If you want to know how many Democrats are in Wyoming, just look at the people they elect. No, I mean, that's not to say that voters aren't lied to during the election, because they absolutely are. There's no doubt about that. But all of those folks that are down there, they all have a voting record now. So you can look it up and you can see exactly what measures these people are voting for. But let's go to Simpson's column. Quote, what do Wyoming Democrats, scarcer than hen's teeth, and weak sauce Republicans, still plenty of them around, have in common? Give up? Well, they both can't stand the Wyoming Freedom Caucus. And boy, do they hate them. To hear the weak sauce Republicans and the scarce as hen's teeth Democrats tell it, the Wyoming caucus is the worst thing to come along since diet beer, since the swine flu, since the breakdancing outbreak, since wearing baseball caps backwards. That bad. I'm going to throw caution to the wind here and just call the Freedom Caucus members Republicans. I'm not getting into the far right, farther right, dyed-in-the-wool right. They might be. Nope, not going to do that. For me, and someone on Facebook called me an old boomer last week, a mantle I wear proudly, the far right, farther right, dyed-in-the-wool right varieties of Republicans all have the most in common with, well, Republicans like us. The whole point Simpson is making is that the very people that the Wyoming caucus and the Democrats are demonizing is you. The vast majority of Wyoming citizens are absolutely conservative. That's why we live here. Nobody would put up with 9 months worth of snow if they didn't want to be left alone. And to be truthful, that's why a lot of people live in Wyoming, just to get away from the cities and, all of the bull crap that happens back there. There's a couple of Wyoming legislators that they'll come right out and tell you that that's why they moved to Wyoming, because they didn't want what they experienced in their home state. Illinois that's where Jeanette Ward is from, to happen here. And so, they're kind of like the watchman on the tower as far as that goes. A lot of these Wyoming legislators down in Cheyenne, they've lived here there so long. And frankly, I'm not convinced they've ever been in any more than 3 counties in the state, simply by the way they vote. So anyway, these dyed-in-the-wool conservatives really are just Republicans, or what Republicans ought to be, or what Republicans were. They're not like the squish Republicans who can't decide what floor to get off an elevator on until they see what floor the Democrats are getting off and on, and frequently join them. You see, we're different. Draconian people like us didn't have to hold our wet finger in the air when it came to boys playing in girls' sports, and this is the part of the piece that I absolutely love and that I wanted to get to. We're different. Draconian people like us didn't have to hold a wet finger in the air when it came to boys playing in girls' sports, boys becoming girls, girls becoming boys, talking gender options with first graders, old fat guys dressing up like women and acting frisky in front of children, codpiece suppressing swimsuits at Target, gender queer in school libraries, grabbing every strings attached dollar from the already hugely in debt federal government, and convicting a former president for expired misdemeanors magically transformed into fresh felonies in New York. I could go on, but why bother? The truth is that all of the people in the Freedom Caucus are no more radical than your everyday mainstream Republican. Absolutely. Now, it's interesting when you compare what happens in Wyoming to what happens on the national scale. You see, nationally, the Democrats would never support any Republican whatsoever. But what we saw in an article from the Cowboy, last week, yesterday, day before, about the Democrat convention, they said that they really don't have any problems with the Wyoming caucus. That's because the Wyoming caucus votes in line with the Democrats about 85% of the time. Why would they have a problem with them? They wouldn't, because they're all Democrats. The people that they have to focus their attack on is the Freedom Caucus, because, of course, those are the draconian people. But look, just listen to the list that Dave Simpson talked about. Boys in girls' restrooms, old fat guys dressing up as women, doing drag queen story hours, gender queer in school libraries, the University of Wyoming doing drag queen trainings with your tax dollars. None of us normal Republicans think that any of that should be going on in Wyoming. But apparently, those people in the Wyoming caucus do. And so, it's a great comparison. And nationally, the Democrats would never side with the Republicans. In fact, they would defeat every Republican they can. because each and every Democrat that get elected goes towards their majority, towards winning power in the House. See, in Wyoming, it's different because the Democrats are already in charge of the House with the Wyoming caucus. And, you know, I've said this before on the program, my friends, if it walks like a donkey, smells like a jackass, votes like a jackass, it's a member of the Wyoming caucus. And that's just the truth of the matter. All you have to do is look at their voting record and you can find it out. Some places to go to look that up is go to Evidence-Based Wyoming. That's an easy place to see how often somebody votes with the Democrats and how often they vote with the Republicans. There's a couple others. WyoVote, that ranks them according to how conservative they are. There's WyoRhino, allegedly ranks people according to the Republican Party platform. So there's a number of places you can look to find out about these people, and you absolutely should. Go check out Dave Simpson's column on the Cowboy. You'll get a chuckle out of it. Now, before we go to the first break, I have to say a big happy birthday to my dear old dad. It's his birthday today. The elder Mr. Iverson, I hope he has a fantastic birthday, goes fishing or something, and gets away from all of his honeydews. So happy birthday, Pop. More after the break. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a selection of better news, entertainment, and commentary than right here on the Independence Network, with great voices like Joey Carenti from Just Blame Joey, Ken Pendergraft from The Ramble-Roon, Tom Kelly from Wide Right Turn, and the lovely Christine from The Hair Affair. And of course, my program, Cowboy State Politics, Wyoming's most listened to political program. Also, don't forget to check out the article section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program.
I remember I was 8 years old with a blank tape waiting by the radio. Come on, man, play it back in black. I want to play it back on repeat. I remember Panama City, long nights with a girl named Christy. She took me down to the Paradise City, then up on Cripple Creek. Still something about a guitar cranked up, head banging to the beat of the bass drum. Still something about a sold-out show in the second row with your girl on your shoulder. Still something about raising a cold beer when the lights go down and the crowd cheers. From Delta Soul to Abbey Road, sweet child to sweet home. Still something about rock and roll, rock and roll. Still something about rock and roll.
Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy, State Politics Live on the Independence Network. Documented to be almost always right at almost 99% of the time. It's a record that the mainstream Wyoming press shouldn't even attempt to calculate because they wouldn't be able to figure it out. All of those freaks in the Wyoming media can't keep their story straight to save their soul. And all you got to do is read the articles on the Cowpie or the Pravda on the Platte, and you'll figure it out. Something interesting just came across the Cowboy State Politics news desk. An article from the Epic Times. Judge Cannon expands hearing on validity of Trump special counsel. Now, this is interesting because there's an argument that's been going on in this other Jack Smith document trial. Well, it's not even a trial yet. It's hearings right now, that Merrick Garland didn't have the authority to nominate Jack Smith to prosecute this case, that special counsels have to be confirmed by the Senate, and that didn't happen. To the article, and I quote, the federal judge overseeing one of the criminal cases against former President Donald Trump has made the unusual decision to open up an upcoming hearing to outside parties as she considers whether special counsel Jack Smith's appointment was valid. U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon, an appointee of President Trump, said on June 4th that 3 outside experts will be able to make their cases for up to 30 minutes each during the hearing, which is slated to take place in federal court in Florida on June 21st. President Trump alleges that Attorney General Merrick Garland's appointment of Mr. Smith is illegal because he was not working for the federal government when the appointment was made. The Appointments Clause does not permit the Attorney General to appoint without Senate confirmation, and that's a key item right there. Nobody confirmed Jack Smith to be the prosecutor in this case. Nobody even asked the Senate about it, so he technically can't be a special counsel. But anyway, the article continues. Without Senate confirmation, a private citizen and like-minded political ally to wield the prosecutorial power of the United States. As such, Jack Smith lacks the authority to prosecute this action. One of President Trump's former attorneys wrote in a motion to the court. Government lawyers say those arguments are wrong, as Matthew Seligman, a former clerk to U.S. District Judge Douglas Ginsburg. Mr. Seligman, one of the outside experts who is being allowed to present to Judge Cannon, said in a recent brief that the Appointments Clause does empower the Attorney General to appoint a special counsel like Mr. Smith. Mr. Trump apparently concedes that Attorney General could constitutionally appoint a special counsel if Congress had vested him with that power, but he argues that Congress did not do so. But that argument simply doesn't, and it goes on. But the whole point is that Merrick Garland could not on his own create a special counsel's office. That takes an act of Congress, as in confirming the special counsel, as it did with Robert Mueller and, who was the guy? Ken Starr with the Bill Clinton thing. So Congress has to approve any sort of special counsel. However, moving on, Biden is claiming, notice the chalkboard in the studio, Biden is claiming that he can do the job of president better than anybody you know. From Breitbart News, and I quote, President Joe Biden claimed he could do the job of president better than anybody when asked if he would be able to carry out the responsibilities of being president into his mid-80s. During an interview with Time magazine, Biden was informed that, quote, large majorities of Americans, including Democrats, are concerned about his age and ability to serve another term as president. Biden, at 81, is currently the oldest president and would be 86 by the time he was out of office. Quote, the last 2 years of presidents, two-term presidents' tenure are usually focused on foreign policy. You are 81 years old and would be 86 by the time you left office, the magazine asked Biden. Large majorities of Americans, including the Democrat Party, tell pollsters they think you are too old to lead. Can you really do the job as an 85-year-old man? Biden responded, I can do it better than anybody you know. You're looking at me. I can take you too. When Biden asked if he considered not running due to his age, Biden said that he had not. Now, clearly, Biden can do the job better than anybody, even President Trump, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and especially listen to his opening arguments just about every time he gets up to a microphone.
Through an international average of pressure.
Yeah. And that's just one of the gaffes coming from the mouth of Joe Biden. But he clearly states that he thinks he's better than anybody. And, the truth is, that's probably what his staff is telling him. Mr. President, you are doing such a fantastic job that nobody can do it better. And I would venture to say that that's about the only way that they can keep the old guy happy. After all, I mean, many of us have had people in our families that are verging on senility or, the early stages of Alzheimer's, and we know that they're pretty excitable. And press reports have pointed out that Biden is also suffering from that he gets pretty excited at times. And so perhaps the only way to keep him calm is to tell him that he's the best president in the history of the world. And clearly Joe Biden thinks so. But let's look at all. And it's not just Biden's, current ineptitude. He has been wrong on pretty much every single foreign policy matter ever in his entire career. He was the guy that said we shouldn't shoot Osama bin Laden. He said that would be a mistake, told Barack Obama not to do it. So, I mean, the guy's wrong all the time. And that's before he, started the quick descent into Alzheimer's, sundowners, whatever you want to call it. But Biden is a fruitcake. And I mean, just a couple of gaffes. And I think that should probably do it. Make our argument that he's not going to be the president much longer.
Beer brewed here, it is used to make the brew beer in this refinery. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the Great Lakes. I wonder why it's called.
Well, there's that one, and then there's this one.
Elect me. I'm in the 20th century, 21st century.
Yeah, I'm in the 20th century. And then, of course, there's the giant gas
We hold
rail.
these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing. True international effort to pressure.
Hillary Clinton is as qualified or more qualified than I am to be vice president of the United States of America. Let's get that straight. And quite frankly, it might have been a better pick than me, but she's first rate.
Wait, but you got it.
That saves billions of gallons of gasoline. I mean, billions of $2.3 billion worth of, $500 billion in savings and 2-point-something billion. I was going to put him. Am I doing this again? My memory is not as good as Justice Roberts, Chief Justice Roberts. So the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway.
Say your mental focus is.
Which focused?
Oh, the fun thing about that gaff reel is you can fast forward to any part in it and you'll get something new every time. The entire thing is like 3 minutes long-ish, and I still haven't included the most recent ones. My guess is by the time Joe Biden is out of office, the gaff reel is going to be at least 10 minutes long, way too much for any of us to put up with. But my point, the reason why I play it all the time is to prove to you that the guy is out of his mind, that he has no idea what he's doing, and that, he's not going to get any better. This is not like some... he doesn't have COVID. He doesn't have the flu. He's not going to recover from this. This is called senility. And if you really want your country to be run by a bumbling fool, then elect Joe Biden. And, I personally think that after the Trump verdict, that Donald Trump is going to win by a landslide. Now, mark my words, my friends. I'll do the political prognosticating right now. I think he's going to win in a landslide. That's if the election is fair. Now, I absolutely think the last election was totally rigged, and there was a number of reasons for that. The Hunter Biden laptop, we can go on, the ballot stuffing that happened, that if you've watched the movie 2,000 Mules, and the funny thing, when that movie came out, I specifically sought out Trotsky Wolfson because he'd just written a piece that whole movie had been debunked. It's been totally debunked by experts. And I asked him, have you ever seen it? Well, no. Don't you think that you should watch a movie before writing an article about it? Don't you think that maybe you should be informed about what you're writing? Well, they're experts, they roundly debunked it. That sort of stuff didn't happen. Uh-huh. Right. And the first time that I saw it, I went to the movie theater in Buffalo, and I went with a friend of mine who he swore up and down that, and a really smart guy. He's got a degree from Princeton. Really, really smart guy. Before we walked in, he's like, there's no way that you can rig an American election. I just want to see what this Dinesh D'Souza argument is. 10 minutes into the movie, he turned and looked at me and said, it was totally rigged. There's no doubt about it. So my point is, my friends, is that if you dig into this, you're going to find that the Democrats cheated and it was rigged, if not directly, indirectly by things like the Hunter Biden laptop and the actions of the DOJ and that stupid letter signed by 51 former intelligence agents that said it was Russian propaganda. So there was a lot of rigging going on, and barring that, Trump will win in a landslide. We're at the bottom of the hour, so let's go ahead and take our second break. And then we're going to get on to Joe Biden's border thing. I mentioned it at the top of the hour, but I've got a couple of sound bites for you, and we'll do that after the break. It's spring in the Cowboy State, or as Albert Somers likes to say, spring-ish. Time to get the motorcycle out of the garage, time to go up the mountain, time to get outside and tromp around. And when you're doing that, you still want to make sure that you take care of your feet. The best way that you can do that is order a pair of Kenai boot socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. I know, your mama always told you that wool socks are only to be worn during the winter. But times have changed, my friends. The Kenai boot socks from the Buffalo Wool Company will not only keep your feet nice and toasty warm, they'll keep them cool and dry in the summer. Trust me, these are the most incredible socks that you're ever going to put on your feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. You're definitely not going to be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you a new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Watch out. Cowboy state politics is only going to get stronger. Don't miss a minute of the program, the podcast, all the interviews on Cowboy state politics. And Cowboy State Politics Live just about every weekday morning beginning at 10 a.m. Unless, of course, I've got to go keep track of the Sheridan County Commissioners or some other rogue government agency. Every once in a while, you got to go do that stuff yourself. And I'm happy that I did that. I walked into the county commissioner's room yesterday, and there were some people that were not happy to see me. Probably because I exposed exactly what one of the Sheridan County commissioners has been doing. That would be Tom Ringley. You see, Tom Ringley has been sabotaging the Sheridan County coroner for at least 2 years. And I finally got around to playing sound bites from him saying that he was not going to vote for anything that the new coroner was going to do simply because that he won the election. Evidently, elections have consequences even when you lose, apparently, for Mr. Tom Ringley. So more on Joe Biden. And there's, again, yesterday he went through this whole border thing, and it's a big shell game. That's nothing more than it is. But Joe Biden has said, quote, "I need to secure the border so we can be the land that welcomes immigrants, as opposed to the land that welcomed immigrants before Joe Biden was around." And I quote, President Joe Biden says his claimed border shutdown is needed to address shrinking support for migration and to preserve the 1950s narrative that America is a nation of immigrants. Some limits are needed to muffle the rising public opposition to migration that has been captured by former President Donald Trump. Biden warned his pro-migration political allies in a statement at the White House on Tuesday. Listen to this. We must face the simple truth. To protect America as a land that welcomes immigrants, I must first secure the border and secure it now. If the United States doesn't secure our border, there's no limit to the number of people who may try to come here because there's no better place on the planet than the United States of America. He's right about that last part, but totally wrong about him securing anything. Biden's new plan, it doesn't secure a darn thing. Here he is at that announcement ceremony. Listen to this.
I've come here today to do what the Republicans in Congress refuse to do. Take the necessary steps to secure our border.
Wait, did I hear something like this?
True international effort to pressure.
Yeah. Every time that guy starts out a statement, he can't get a complete, coherent statement out. It's always gibberish, which is exactly what you heard just a minute ago. I've come here to secure the border that I myself opened wide open. Essentially, that's what he's saying. But the truth is, he's not securing anything. He continues, for those who say the steps I've taken are too strict, I say to you, be patient. The goodwill of the American people is wearing thin right now. Doing nothing is not an option. We have to act. We must act consistent with both our laws and our values. Well, the truth is, his little border thing, it lets people in. It doesn't keep people out. And the only time he's going to act is if it gets above a certain threshold. And I think that number is like 5,000 a day. 5,000 people a day, my friends. Now, and again, I want you to look at the narrative. It's no longer illegal immigration when the Democrats talk about it. It's migration. You see, migration is something that we shouldn't inhibit whatsoever. We should allow people to migrate. In fact, we don't need any borders at all, even though we're spending billions upon billions upon billions of dollars to secure the border in Ukraine. But apparently we can't do that here. It's worthwhile to do in Europe, Eastern Europe, but it's not worthwhile to do here because, we're the nation of immigrants. Well, we are, but we are not the nation of illegal immigrants. You see, the nation of immigrants part, that was done according to U.S. law. That was not done illegally. You've got to pay attention to the narratives, my friends. They will tell you everything that you need to know. When I do an interview on Cowboy State Politics, I try to let the person I'm talking to just kind of talk. Because usually you'll hear what they're really about, what they're really saying, if you just let them talk. And, the more comfortable people become, the easier it is for them to tell the truth. And the higher the likelihood that they're going to say something that tells you what they actually mean. And that's the whole point of doing all of these interviews. By the way, the Independence Network has done a ton of interviews already. Myself, Joey Carenti, and Ken, we've been burning the midnight oil getting these interviews out. And again, one more shameless plug for the podcast. Kathy Russell, the interview with Kathy Russell is going to play right after I'm done here on Cowboy State Politics Live. It's a fantastic interview that you absolutely don't want to miss. So Biden recently gave an interview, not a live interview, to Time Magazine. And, you know, Time Magazine and other written publications, they do the opposite of what I do. I usually take the written word and then I tell you about it or comment on it. That's what the whole stack of stuff is here in the studio. And of course, if you're not watching on cowboystatepolitics.com, you wouldn't see the stack of stuff. But I take the written word and then I tell you about it and I analyze it and we break it down and I tell you what it really means. Time Magazine, well, they do the written word. And so they can leave stuff out. And, you know, because it's not recorded and they're not going to publish the record. Well, I'm sure it was recorded, but they're not going to publish that. So in the interview, and there's a lot more that's in here, but there was one very interesting part. The interviewer, and let's see, his name is Massimo Calabrese, and he discussed his interview with Joe Biden on CNN this morning. Calabrese began by discussing Biden saying, "I can take you," during an interview that stated it was a lighthearted moment in the interview. It was quite funny, actually, he says. And then host Jake Tapper asks, President Biden brushing off any concerns about his age. How did he seem to you? And Calabrese answered, "He appears very much as he does on TV. He's older than when he started in office. It's visible. And if you just look side by side on the tape, the transcript is a good place for people to go and just assess that." Well, the problem with that is you can't really tell how Biden's age is affecting him in the transcript unless they publish it absolutely word for word with the ums and the ers and the uhs and here's the other part that you really don't get a sense of in a written interview, the silences, the time it takes to go from one thought to another. Now, a lot of people, when you're talking to them, there's an intentional silence there where, you know, they're being deliberative in the words that they choose. But most of the time, when you have a long pause, you can tell that somebody's searching for a word. And in Joe Biden's case, it happens all the time. Somewhere in the gaff reel, I've got a part where he does exactly that. I mean, it's like 2 minutes where he says like 3 or 4 words. So you can't tell that from a written interview. So here's that part from CNN where the Calabrese is talking about his age.
I mean, he appears very much as he appears on TV. He is older than when he started in office. It's visible if you just look side by side on the tape. The transcript is a good place for people to go to assess that. You know, he was, we describe it in the piece as well. There's some sort of color description of how he appeared in there.
When it came up, did you get the sense that he takes the concerns about his age from, according to polls, a majority of the American people, including Democrats, seriously?
Yeah, he didn't pause when we asked him about it. He came back pretty fast. I think, you know, to some degree, that may be a stock answer. I didn't get the sense that he was troubled by it, but
there's a reason why Merrick Garland classified the tapes from investigator Herr's interview with President Joe Biden. They're now classified. The only way that they can be listened to is in a SCIF. No documents in, no documents out, no audio in, no audio out. That's the only place that those things can be listened to now. They're absolutely classified, which means that we, the public, don't have any access to them. We can't see and we can't hear how long it took Joe Biden to remember, if he ever did, that he was vice president of the United States. We can't hear that he forgot when his son died. We can't get any sense of all of those lapses in judgment. Merrick Garland has classified them. And so there's no way that we can do that. Same thing with this interview. Now, Calabrese says, well, he came back pretty fast. Well, define pretty fast. Let us judge for ourselves the mental state of Joe Biden. And, you know, Calabrese and Time Magazine, they're a written publication. And so don't expect any sort of audio to come out about that. They might later. Who knows? You know, sometimes folks that do written interviews will publish the audio or the video of it later. But I'll keep my eyes peeled for it. and we'll see. Coming up after the break, I'd like to talk about the United Methodist Church. In one day, they lost 1 million members, and it all goes back to their push for the LGBTQZWD agenda. So 1 million church members in one single day, huge hit. And The Blaze has an article about that coming up. So we'll do that next.
I'm driving black on black. Just got my license back. I've got this feeling in my face. This train is coming off the track. I'll ask the light if the devil needs a ride because the angel of my ride ain't hanging out with me tonight. I'm driving past your house while you was thinking out. I got the car door opened up so you can jump in on the run. Your mom don't know that you were missing. She'd be pissed if she could see the parts of you that I've been kissing, screaming, oh, we're never gonna quit. Ain't nothing wrong with it. Just acting like we're animals. No matter where we go, 'cause everybody knows we're just a couple animals. So come on, baby, get in. Get in, just get in. Check out the trouble we're in.
You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, entertainment, and commentary than on Cowboy State Politics Live. You know, the program you're listening to right now. And frankly, why would you want to look anywhere else anyway? Let's be honest, only a liberal redcoat commie would do that. And if you want to listen to my podcast, you can find it at cowboystatepolitics.com or anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. If your name is Sleepy Joe Biden and you can't remember if you put socks on this morning or not, well, I can't really help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president of the United States. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone, having more fun than anybody in Wyoming should be allowed to have. That old homage to the great Maha Rushy. I really miss that guy. Just his humor. And if you notice, if you listen close to cowboystatepolitics.com, the podcast, the live program, you'll hear some Rush's influence on me. You know, I began listening to him probably when I was in 8th grade. And, you know, he was a fixture in my life for a really long time. So anyway, I mean, it is no coincidence that you'll hear and experience a lot of the things that Rush said. I mean, it's because he set the mold, man. He made things work. And so that's what we try to do here at Cowboy State Politics is set the mold for news in Wyoming, because you're certainly not getting it from any of the mainstream media outlets. So before the break, I was telling you how the United Methodist Church lost 1 million members in a single day. And I mean, everybody can probably guess why. The Methodist Church has gone full bore LGBTQ, Z, W, D, P, S, M, those last two. Anyway, they're totally on board with that agenda. From The Blaze, and I quote, "In one fell swoop last week, the United Methodist Church lost more than 1 million members, Weeks after the UMC voted to allow LGBTQZXWD practicing clergy and reverse prohibitions on same-sex marriage, the United Methodist Church of Ivory Coast in Africa voted on May 28th to leave the United Methodist Church. So we're talking about congregations in Africa. This is, quote, "This is not an emotional issue, but a matter of unchangeable truth." They say homosexuality is a sin. There you go. That's why they're leaving. The West African Methodists made the decision to leave the UMC for reasons of conscience before God and His Word, the supreme authority in matters of faith and life. The decision of the UMC to embrace LGBTQ culture and same-sex marriages deviates from Holy Scriptures, according to the EMUCI. The UMC Church, United Methodist Church, is therefore sacrificing its honor and integrity to honor the LGBTQ community. In a statement, Bishop Benjamin Boney said that the UMC is, quote, "now based on socio-cultural and contextual values which have consumed its doctrinal and disciplinary integrity. This is a significant development because it means the UMC is losing more than 1 million members." And the truth is, my friends, if you're going to a church that is preaching all this kind of stuff, it is absolutely in opposition to what is written in God's word, the Bible. How can an organization that purports to preach from the Bible preach things that are absolutely in contradiction to it? You can't. This is it's the exact same thing as schools teaching that there are more than two genders, that there's 57 or 96 or whatever, when you can go right down the hall to the biology lab and you can find books, probably every book on the shelf, that contradicts everything you just heard in the other classroom. This is fantasy, my friends. And if you are attending a church that is preaching this kind of stuff, you need to turn around and run out the door. Don't walk, run, because they're not teaching you the Bible. They're not teaching you God's word, and they're not teaching you the truth. So good for these African Methodists to completely get out of the UMC. Absolutely. And, here's the thing. I grew up Methodist. And when I lived in Virginia, I was trying to find a church, as you should probably do when you move to a new place. And I thought, well, I grew up in the Methodist church. Let's go try that out. And I got on my motorcycle and rode to the church. And I see this giant pride flag out front on their flagpole. And I didn't even step foot in the church. I just turned right on the next block and went back to the house because, I'm not going to sit there and be told lies. That's one of the things on this program that we don't do. And I'm not going to put up with it in my personal life either. So more from the article. Even more important is the fact that Methodism is the conservative traditional variety is growing on the Ivory Coast. The UMC in the United States, on the other hand, has seen years of decline, especially as the denomination embraces liberalism. Ministry Watch explained, quote, "With 900 churches and 100 preaching points, the church has experienced a 7 to 8% annual growth." Now they're talking about Africa. Its demographic reflects the countries with 60% under 35 and women as the majority. Alongside its spiritual mission, the church runs schools and a hospital while engaging in community development. The Côte d'Ivoire Conference was granted provisional membership in the denomination during the 2004 General Conference and fully admitted into 2008. It quickly became one of the denomination's largest conferences, with over 1 million professing members as of the most recent report. So this is a major hit to that church. And what you're going to see is more people drift towards, non-denominational churches. Good example is the one I go to. It's the Cowboy Church of the Bighorns, non-denominational. And we read right from the Bible. And that's where Minister Mark preaches from. It's just the word straight out of the good book. And there's none of this liberalism involved. And that's the way you should do. I mean, if what you're hearing from the pulpit is different than what you're reading in the Bible, there is a big problem, and you ought to run out the door. Now, Major League Baseball, and this is yesterday I saw the article that it made me smile bigger than I'm possibly capable of smiling. The Texas Rangers are once again the only team to not have a Pride Night, not support Pride Month, not do any of that bull crap. It doesn't have anything to do with baseball. Who you choose to go to bed with doesn't have anything to do with the most perfect game ever invented. And Major League Baseball should not be pushing this agenda on everybody else. So that article was out yesterday, made me really happy. But another one, and this one might come as seem a little contradictory, but it's not, and I'll explain. More MLB baseball players have been suspended for gambling, including top Oakland receiver Michael Kelly and a World Series pitcher named Andrew Salfrank. Suspensions come after the Padres player Tucupita Marcano was banned for life. Now, of course, the most famous baseball player, the all-time career hits leader Pete Rose, was banned from baseball for life for betting on baseball. And, there were some arguments at the time that he bet against his team. That's not true. He bet on the Reds to win, but that's still betting on baseball. And he's still banned for life, by the way. The all-time career hits leader, not in the Hall of Fame, is banned for life. To the article, and I quote, after San Diego Padres utility player Tucupita Marcano received a lifetime ban for betting on baseball, it was revealed that 4 other players have received suspensions for gambling as well. MLB said that Marcano placed 387 bets totaling $150,000, 231 of them which were related to the major leagues. Of those bets, 25 were placed on the Pittsburgh Pirates, his team, games while he was on their roster. He did not appear in any of those games, however. It was also revealed that at least 4 other pitchers have been suspended for placing bets. This included fellow MLB player Michael Kelly, who, statistically speaking, is one of the Oakland Athletics' top relief pitchers with a 2.59 ERA in 28 appearances. He was found to have placed 10 bets on 9 MLB games between October 5th and 17th of 2021 when he was a minor league player. He wagered on outcomes, over and under runs, and individual pitcher strikeout totals. He wagered $99.22 and won $28.30. Kelly was declared ineligible for 1 year for betting on baseball. He last appeared in AAA in 2003. There are more people involved in this than many people want to believe. Now, the reason why I say this is kind of good news is that the rules have to be followed. And if you're going to engage in an organization or an occupation and you agree to the rules, you should follow them. And one of the rules in Major League Baseball is you don't bet on baseball. Definitely, you don't bet on your own team because you're engaged in it. It's no different than the Black Sox that, the 8 men out during I think it was the 1929 World Series. Maybe it was earlier. I always get the date wrong. But during the World Series, 8 men of the Chicago White Sox allegedly took a bribe. That's where Shoeless Joe Jackson got banned for life. So this has been, it's part of baseball history. You don't bet on baseball. You don't take bribes. You certainly don't take bribes in anything, but you just don't bet on baseball. So I'm glad. I'm not glad that the shadow has come over baseball once again, people wagering on their occupation, but I am glad that Pete Rose is not the only one, because for a long time, it was just Pete Rose, and you knew that other people were involved in sports betting, and that's become a major industry in America. And I realize the temptation of it. I get it, but you agreed to the rules, take some personal responsibility. These guys violated the rules. They bet on baseball, and they should have the same punishment as Pete Rose, and no exceptions. And so I'm glad that Major League Baseball is sticking to their guns. Now the question of, should that actually be a rule? And I think it should. I think that it goes to the integrity of the game. You don't want anything to cast doubt on your performance or your, how you play the game. And it should be, baseball is one of those things that is a complete meritocracy, that those people who play better get to play, and those who don't, well, they ride the bench. But the point is that you don't want anything to cast a shadow over what it is that you're doing. And, if you're betting on baseball, that's certainly a big shadow. It calls into question your every play, your every move. And it's, maybe you bet against the game and you intentionally tanked it, which is exactly what the Black Sox were accused of. So this has a long history in baseball, and I, for one, am absolutely in favor of it. Everybody needs to be treated equally, and if you agree to the rules, well, then you should follow them. Coming up tomorrow on the program, I've got another baseball story, and this one is a continuation of the Negro leagues being included in statistics of Major League Baseball. And there's an article that I found that says, oh no, we should have asterisks by those records, and we should still show that the Negro leagues were separate. And there's a long discussion on that, and I'm going to get into that tomorrow. I'm a big baseball fan, and anytime there's an important article that comes up, like the one we finished on today, I'm going to bring it to you. Don't miss the Cowboy State Politics podcast, the interview with Kathy Russell. It is absolutely a great interview. It's fascinating. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics.